833. Number 2, project management presentation of possible construction delivery methods.
Good evening. Dr. Carmen, honorable board members, I'm Joseph Palacios, Principal Managing Partner for Brighton Group. I'd like to acknowledge some of my staff that's with us this evening. We do have Pepe Caso, who heads our legal contracts procurement. We do have Mark Bruman here with us. He assists Pepe, as well as Mark Iglesias, who's with us as well. He handles a lot of the project management, on-site, off-site utilities, and the coordination of access to our state, sorry about that, through TxDOT and local government cities. First and foremost, we were asked to present today on the different delivery models on procurement for construction. And what I'm going to turn over to Pepe Caso. We went ahead and did a PowerPoint presentation, as well as we handed out some of the supporting documents that you can follow. We also added a lot of the government codes that are out there that guide school districts for this type of process. So I'll turn it over to Pepe. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, board members, members of the San Benito community. So, reading statutes is a little bit dry. In front of you, there's two packages. One that has kind of the bound version, which is going to be the presentation, but to go along with it, we've got the relevant laws that apply in this case. So, a lot of times when you hear about the different delivery mechanisms for construction, it seems a little bit foreign, and it just seems that that it exists because that's just the way it is, or because some people know about it, or that they're kind of hiding the ball on what it is. But in reality, and we'll go through statute by statute to just kind of trace it, there's 3 delivery mechanisms that exist for construction. The most basic one, which is the one that I think most people are used to seeing, is a design, bid, build. Essentially, you hire an architect or an engineer to design something, you bid it out, you give it to the lowest bidder, and you build it, and that's kind of what we've been used to for the last couple of decades. What we've been noticing, through litigation and through other kind of sour experiences is that hasn't been very successful, and there's a lot of reasons why that is. So, our legislators have created a new mechanism that allows 2 alternatives to that. One is called the design-build process, and the other is called the construction manager at risk with a guaranteed maximum price process. And I know your attorney and I are probably the only people that enjoy reading this. Tony and I stay reading these late at night, but let's start out with the presentation, and then we'll follow up with this. And I just want the board to be very aware of why it is that we're saying this. It's not just a recommendation. This is really what the legislators intended school districts to pursue. So the first thing is, what is the meaning of the word procurement? And because we use it a lot, right? Procurement really is a process where somebody purchases goods or services. And in this case, for construction, we're going to do both. We're going to be buying materials to build and the services of the people that are going to build them. So everything from this point on is going to involve procurement. And, really one of the points that keeps coming up is, why is it important for San Benito CISD to follow the procurement process spelled out by the legislature? Reason number 1 is that it's required by law, obviously. But the second and third reason are very, very important. The first is that it creates transparency for the government spending. And you'll see how when we break down the different processes, it's going to be very clear that the community is going to be able to see how the money was spent and why it was spent that way. And the third is that it ensures a responsible use of public funds. Okay, so this is where the fun begins. All right. So we're going to go into the 2 separate statutes that regulate construction. The first one is Texas Education Code, Section 44.031. And I think that a lot of people hear 50,000, 50,000, 50,000. And the reason why 50,000 is so important is because Education Code 53.031 subsection A says, and so if everybody flips to page 1 of their package, I underlined the relevant section, but it says, all school district contracts, meaning everything that this school board ever passes, for the purchase of goods and services valued at $50,000 or more. So essentially, that's the applicability criteria. That captures every decision that the school board ever makes regarding construction at 50,000 or more has to follow the following process. And then it cross-references Chapter 2269 of the Government Code for Construction Services. So essentially, the Texas Education Code says, if you're gonna spend more than 50,000 in construction, now let's flip over to Chapter 2269 of the Government Code. So if you keep going to page 5, you'll see the actual government code. And as I'm presenting, I'll show you where the different laws are. But I guess that's what we're trying to just convey to the board, that there is a reason why we're gonna be explaining all these things. It's because the law requires it to be like this. And then running parallel to this process under 2269 is Government Code 2254, which regulates the procurement of professional services under the Professional Services Procurement Act. And that's gonna be for your architects, engineers, surveyors, material testing services. And you'll see how it's a little bit different when you select under the procurement, under the professional services than for construction. So there's really only 4 possible mechanisms that the school could ever use to build something. The first one is the competitive sealed bid process, which we already went up to, kind of briefly discussed. The second is the design build process, which we'll touch on in a second, but essentially that means you pick one team. One team shows up and they've got their contractor, engineer, everything. So it's a one-stop shop and they're gonna deliver the whole product. It's a turnkey. You know, that's the term, turnkey. You just hire that one group and hope for the best that they're gonna get it done. The third approach is the construction manager at risk with the guaranteed maximum price. What this allows is for you to select your architect and the contractor that you're gonna have build the facility at the same time. And we're gonna talk about the benefits and kind of the ups and downs of that. And the last one is a purchasing cooperative. Essentially, you've heard of the buy board, TIPS, these different interlocal entities. Usually those are a little bit not the best for more complex construction, but they're great for certain tasks, like if you're gonna replace an AC unit or paint some walls, things like that. So now let's take a step back to the Professional Services Procurement Act. If you go with options 1 or 3, which is the low bid or the CMAR, then the school board is going to have to choose an architect and an engineer. And even with a design build, you need to select an inspector and a materials testing expert. So no matter what process the school board goes for, we're gonna have to follow this process. And you're familiar with this process. Essentially, step 1 is that you're gonna request qualifications. So essentially, professionals, whether they be architects, engineers, are gonna submit their statements of qualifications. So the school requests qualifications, people provide their statement of qualifications. The board can then interview all the responsive entities, and then the school district is gonna rank based on qualifications. So price cannot be a factor when selecting who the most qualified professional is. Essentially, you create a list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you try to negotiate a contract with number 1, number 2, number 3, and so forth. And that's how you select professionals. So if we pose a hypothetical, San Benito CISD is looking to build a new building. Must it comply with the procurement rules to award the contracts associated with the building? Yes, if it's gonna be over $50,000. And so we know it is, so we can we can really ask the more fundamental question, which is, hey, we're ready to build a new building. What's our next step? So now we're gonna go to the first process, which again is what everybody's used to, what everybody's seen their whole lives, which is the competitive sealed bid process, the design bid build. And under this concept, school district selects a designer, there's a final design, you go out to market, whoever comes in with the low bid builds it, and you kind of hope for the best. So,
Yeah, and if I can cover some of the pros on that, this is a good time, and we can take questions as we go through this. Obviously, the pros is on competitive on low bid, you get the lowest bid. You get the lowest. The problem with that is there was not substantial time to at least start vetting the project. If there's any ambiguity in the design, traditionally what contractors do, if there's that uncertainty, they'll leverage by buffering a lot of their prices on their subcontract that they're going out for, on the bids that they're receiving as they're preparing their final bid. That obviously leads to potential change orders and all of that. Now, once we get done with this, we'll talk about our role in the process after you decide procurement. But that's the general pro that we can see. But there's really a short side to that because there's so much that happens after that. Traditionally, by the end, you might have a low bid, but throughout construction, right at the closing, because of substantial change orders might lead to be the more expensive route. You just will never know that at the beginning of construction. So that's the con. The other issue is you base it on price, not qualification. So it's open to any. You could have companies that have been in the business for decades to companies that just got into the business. And then so you're potentially awarding a contract to probably a more less qualified firm. Now, does that happen traditionally? It does. We've seen it in the construction industry that, not necessarily the lowest price is your better, most responsible construction company that you hire. But that's definitely the con to the low bid process. You want to go over design build?
yeah, so and I guess just to make more sense of this, so if we're looking at Chapter 2269, which is what the Texas Education Code tells us to go by, there's 3 subchapters that discuss the 3 mechanisms that we're going to go over. So in Chapter 7, you'll see that subchapter C, which is the competitive bidding method. Then on page 10, it's the construction manager at risk for subchapter F. And then on page 16, it's subchapter G, building using the design build method. So that's the real reason why we're giving you these 3. There's an infinite amount of possibilities, but this is what the government told us we can do. We can bid it out, we can design build it, or we can do CMAR, because that's what the government code tells us, because that's what the education code restricts school districts to do. So with the design build process, what's going to happen is there's going to be a dream, say that whether it's a new auditorium or whatever, multi-use facility, whatever it may be, and an ad is going to come out by the school district saying, we are requesting design build firms to submit their qualifications. And similar to the Professional Services Act, people will come in, tell you how great they are, and based on who has the highest qualifications, the school district is going to pick that one team. And that team is going to be made up of everything. The school district really doesn't have any more selection over who's going to be the architect, anything. You just select that one group of professionals, and they're going to carry the ball throughout the process.
Yeah, and if I could talk just a little bit, obviously the pros to that is you're able to maximize time on the multiple procurement processes that you're not going to have to go through. That's probably the biggest benefit is a timetable. The adverse on the other side of the coin, what makes it challenging is that you have your professionals working primarily for your contractor. They don't represent the school board, so they're in tune, working together hand in hand to come up with the design, the construction documents, all the way up to the final guaranteed maximum price on the project itself. This is a process that we're familiar with. We've utilized the low bid. We've been involved in the design build contracts, and we've been involved in every one of these procurement processes. There are benefits to use a design build at times. I can't tell you that we have not favored it at some point in time. It just depends on the project itself. So there's no wrong procurement process to follow. It's the manner that you move forward with, and to assure that we set in the safeguards to assure that we can get you where you need to be. But that's the design build. I'll turn it over to Pepe on the construction manager at risk.
Thank you. And finally, we've got the construction manager at risk process. So with the CMAR, the reason why there's an at-risk associated with this is because a CMAR is going to take a gamble. At some point, they're going to receive a set of designs, and they're going to tell the school board, hey, I can build this for $100. And if for whatever reason steel triples in price or something happens, they need to keep their word. They need to make sure that they're going to build that building for $100, no change orders, no nothing. So that gives the school board a lot of safety, because the CMAR is selected concurrently with the architect, meaning that as the designs are being built, the project manager, the CMAR, everybody's working together to make sure, hey, can this be built? Because a lot of architects, they like to design some things, just kind of draw some things that may not be buildable, that may not be, that may have materials that are not readily available, that may be too expensive. So we usually have, 4 different timelines that we say, okay, at 25%, 50%, 75%, 100%, are we on point? Are we on scope? Are we on budget? Can we build this? And the CMAR is also very, very aware of reality, construction. Is the staff available? Is the expertise available? And so with this process, the school board would select an architect, an engineer, several other professionals through the Professional Services Procurement Act. And as soon as that contract is entered into, then we would initiate the process for selection of a construction manager at risk, which would be working alongside with the design and the project manager to go through the first couple of stages. And that's got a lot of advantages, and maybe we can go over those.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, when you get 3 teams, and we look, it's a 3-prong approach. As you're working through design, developing construction documents, you're able to do constructability reports on the, as you're going through the process, you're able to at least get some pricing based on local bids that will be going through the process. There's a lot of transparency, because the way it works is for every division, every section, they're receiving bids and awarding them based on qualifications and price. So it's a very transparent process. And it allows all of us to work as a team to get to the guaranteed maximum price. Again, traditionally here, throughout Texas, throughout the United States, it's becoming a more used methodology. Again, not that you couldn't use any of the others, but those are a lot of the pros. The cons to it is that it takes a lot. You have to assure that all entities are working hand in hand together to get to that guaranteed maximum price. The benefits is we get there without no change orders. We do set up in this method, if the school district is interested in following it, once we get to a guaranteed maximum price, we negotiate somewhat of what we call a betterment fund or contingency, because there are little contingencies that happen on design to construction, unforeseen issues maybe on the site itself. But there's very minimal at best. I'll give you an example. On most of our contracts, it's rare that we tap into the fund. I think on some of our contracts, we barely tap maybe 10% of what is in the betterment fund. On average, I think on a $10 million project, our average was somewhere around $200,000 is what we allotted for something like that. So it's an area that we rarely tap. So traditionally, when we've gone through a CMAR process, and we get to a guaranteed maximum price, it pretty much holds on key. What we do is, if we are successful in that, we just reprioritize the betterment fund to FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and other elements that are not part of the construction project. So we use that as a hope that we can address other issues while we're going through construction. That's the, is there another? I'll turn it over to Pepe just to continue on the presentation.
So just to keep going with this, you know, after, well, actually, let's go over the last slide, which is the purchasing cooperative. So co-ops are really big entities that operate nationwide, if not internationally. So a lot of the pricing that is done through the buy board, through TIPS, is great because of, there's certain things like software, like trucks, that it's gonna be standard pricing throughout the nation. But then there's gonna be other things like maybe carpentry, where they're gonna use pricing indices to figure out how much would it cost to build this. And they may think, hey, wait a second, a carpenter in New York charges $400 an hour, when maybe some are local individuals may be charging $50 an hour. So when tasks are brought under a co-op, we're not sure what pricing index is being used for services. For goods, we know that it is what it is. You're not gonna be able to get a Dell computer, you know, cheaper than what the buy board is gonna give you. But for services, it's gonna be very hard for a buy board to be able to distinguish what the capacity of labor is, say in San Benito as opposed to Mercedes, as opposed to Rio Hondo, much less the whole state of Texas or their 4-state region. So again, when is a co-op a great deal? For example, an AC unit that's over $50,000, and you want to replace it, and you don't want to go procure an engineer because that's what the education code requires, that you get an engineer to design it, and then that you go out to bids, and you may just say, well, you know, it's not worth it. Let's go to the co-op. Somebody that's qualified is going to come in, take out the unit, bring in a new unit. We're done. But I don't think that would be the appropriate mechanism for a building or something very large, because we're going to be subject to pricing that can't be challenged, that the buy board determines, and we just had to live with that. So we created a chart of kind of the pros and cons of each one, and a ranking from our point of view, and we'll have.
Yeah, and it's just a basic ranking. On the competitive bid side, we ranked number 3, design build. Again, on the metrics here, identifies good timing, QCQA, limited transparency, limited oversight. We ranked at 2. On the CMA or process with the GMP, it's pretty good on all levels, and we ranked at number 1. And the last one, the co-ops, I mean, we ranked it last. It's a less more favorable route. Of course, any of these can rank. This is just a base ranking, not to say that we cannot make any of them work, because that's our job. Our job is to listen to our board. Whatever methodology you choose or favor is the one we're going to make work. Now, talking a little bit about what our role is, thank you very much, obviously, for the opportunity. We've been working with our team, also our experts as well, to pre-scope a lot of it. We're very familiar with the 3 projects that the board that the district is looking at building, and we've started putting together some of the scoping that's going to be required. We've had Mark working with the off-site and on-site utility needs. We're getting ready to hopefully start looking at boring and getting some materials testing on the soil, and try to develop what we believe will be the next steps in moving forward as you're contemplating which procurement process to follow. And I know this is, you know, we were asked to present on these models. We've used them all. We've worked with them all. Some are more labor intensive than others, but none are wrong to do. All of them are available. They're available to you. It just depends on what the will of the board is and what they want to see out of a project. There are some very complex projects, such as aquatic centers, natatoriums, and then you look at indoor practice facilities, and there are specialized groups that do some elements, if not all of the elements. And these are ones that we will have to meditate on and hopefully guide you in the best way we possibly can to guide you on which procurement model is probably more feasible for those respective projects. But I have to say, and the disclaimer is, although we rank in a certain way, there is no wrong way. You hired a project manager to facilitate 100% of everything from paper to turning soil to turning over the keys. And that requires every element of oversight. Again, in the more perfect world, that is the perfect world way that we would rank it, but it doesn't mean that that's the right way or the only way to do it. We've worked with clients that just say, hey, I want to see the lowest price, and that's what I want to see. What we lose there is the variable of time, because getting through the process, there's a potential chance of overbid, underbid, whether or not it was a responsible bidder. We go through that soul-searching period on whether or not we will award the bid or not, or rescope it. So there's a lot of things that go wrong, could go wrong. Doesn't mean that it will go wrong on the first competitive bid market. So it continues to be used, and it's a process for projects that are not subject to time, and they want to go through the process. On design build and CMR, they're relatively pretty close, even though there's pros and cons to both of them. But I think that it's how we structure a lot of the contracts, the scopes, and what we expect from them. And having a project manager, we can develop a lot of those agreements to assure that they're using local merchants, local subcontractors. And there's a lot of things that we can facilitate as we're preparing to go out for the RFQ. So these are the things that we want to work alongside with your administrative staff, your legal counsel, to get some bearing of what you believe could be a process that you'd like to follow on each respective project. So I leave that, and we are open for any questions. Sorry for the lack of enthusiasm. It's hard to come back after your teachers and construction is a real serious subject matter. It's exciting, but it's one of the things that requires 100% diligence and attention, and to assure that we work not just with the district, but everyone that comes to the project site to assure that they do what we believe is they're contractually obligated to, but not just that, but with the quality and the respect to the quality that we're looking for them to deliver. But we open up for any questions if there are any.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Palacios. I just want to say this was a good presentation. You admitted yourself it lacked entertainment. We didn't see it that way, but that's on you. But I think this is as transparent as we want to be. Before we're accused by anybody of not being transparent, especially in such a very important process. So thank you for providing this. But to your point on the design, build, and CMAR, I think there are two good points in terms of, because right here, where it lacks an oversight versus full oversight, I think that's why we hired a project manager, right? Because
Yes,
if
sir.
there's lack of oversight, then it's y'all's responsibility to make sure that, just like in CMAR, let's say, that covers that, that you would be there to cover that discrepancy or that gap that design build typically does without a project manager.
Yeah, and that's correct. It's the emphasis on where it's more labor intensive for us, as opposed, there's a different level at each one of them. On a low bid, it's heavy early, and then it's heavy during, and it's heavy at the end to assure that it got there. On some of the other ones, it's just a level of service on where we emphasize a lot of our attention. That's what determines based on the procurement. So, but yes, that is why you hired us. And so, with that being said, as I say, there's no wrong process here. It's what the will of the board is, and what you believe is in San Benito ISD's best interest to follow, and we work hard to make it work. Having said that, obviously, regardless of what method you want to follow, there's a great deal of work that will be required of us to pre-scope, to assure that we do our due diligence on some preliminary materials testing, a lot of stuff on on-site, off-site utilities. So that time in which we're in that interim time to assure that we get all our bearings of accounting for all variables and their variable change, to assure that when we go out for an RFQ, that we've been given enough chance to assure what those variables will be, and what we're expecting of the contractor and the professional service. So we've been pretty busy. Our team's been working over the weekend, our architects, our engineers, just to kind of get a lot of those pre-scoping milestones and to try to get this ready for whatever process the board decides.
Mr. Palacios, I want to thank you so much for this presentation. It's just like what Michael just said, sitting up here, we're not contractors, and we're not gonna pretend to be, but, our constituents and the people that had trust in us, with the bond is very important to me, and the fellow board members as well. So by having someone like yourself here to assess the situation and take on this risk and have the knowledge that you have to help our constituents as well as us, the board, through this process, I think I think it's a very, very strong and very needed component to this, for us being successful.
Yeah.
And for us to make sure that every single dollar that bond dollar and building that we build is built to the best of, that we can. So I just want to thank you for that.
Well, and I'd like to add that a lot of what we do today is going to mitigate cost on the professional side as well as the construction. So every minute that we have, every hour that we have, so that we could forecast and preset some of the pre-scopings will allow for savings. Our job is to make sure we deliver, that we meet the expectation of the board as well as contractually, but at the end of the day, the quality and the respect to that time tables that we're going to have on these projects. And I'm going to knock on wood, when we're ahead of schedule on most of our projects. Every project has significant savings, and we don't want to change this, our mission here for San Bernardino's to follow suit with what we've been able to do. We have a very complex team, a very qualified team, and they're great at what they do. You'll see many of them coming right now. You're seeing Pepe and you're seeing Mark, and you'll see us throughout the process, but Laura will be here on the next few meetings on the pre-scoping, and our job is to make sure that we're team members to work with alongside whoever you choose to assure that we do it at every dollar you expend is you get the return on investment.
Mr. Palacio, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Being the fact that CMAR and design build, and design build, basically they bring their engineer, architect, and all of that with them, right? And then CMAR, we get to choose somebody from the valley to construct or architect the project also. Of course, design, if it's a company from out of state or out of, the valley, they bring their own engineers.
And that would be correct. On the design build, there are design build contracts that we've let that they've used. They've chosen. We don't have the discretion. The board doesn't choose, nor do we, on who they decide their professionals will be. On some of the projects, there have been locals, and in some respective projects, they have brought them up from wherever they're from. The challenges, and again, the challenge is on us more than anybody else, is to make sure that it works, whether they're here in San Benito or in Brownsville or in Laredo or San Antonio or Dallas. It's a challenge nonetheless, because physical interaction is the best interaction when discussing projects, especially something as complex as construction. And we have to have a one-on-one, and that is what we're expecting with any professional we come. That doesn't say that we cannot use the method of a design build and in hopes that we can contractually get them where they have to. It's easier when they want to. It's harder when they have to. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge more for us than anybody. But I think that every project, in order to achieve success, is to mitigate those challenges as best as we possibly can.
But can I say something else?
Yes, sir.
Basically, when y'all came in front of us for project managers, all of you had wonderful presentations, better than others. But a lot of these companies have their architects, and they're from the valley. That's my thing. They're from the valley, engineers from the valley. Emma mentioned one of them from Brownsville. She really was impressed with it.
Yes.
He didn't qualify for project manager, but his architect was something else to be considered within. That's my point. Selecting somebody within the valley that can do the project instead of bringing. I don't mind selecting somebody for the project, but bringing engineers and architects from another, not the valley.
Right. And our job is to present as best, to communicate as best as we can all facets, and really allow you all to decide which is the mechanism you want to follow. There are good architects both here and everywhere. We want to make sure that the ones that are selected have a commitment to San Benito to assure that they deliver what they're hired to do. It's our job to make sure that they do, and we'll make sure that they do regardless of who's chosen. I guess that's my politically correct position about it, but again, I will never take your right as elected officials. My job is just to present everything possible, the pros and the cons, and allow the board to make the decision, and we're going to make it work one way or another.
And just to clarify, Mr. Palacios, as a board, we don't have to select CMAR for all three projects or design build for all three projects. We
No,
can
you-
do
you-
design build
each-
for one, CMR for two, CMR for one, design build for two. I just want to make that clarification that as a board, we're not stuck to a cookie cutter approach with all three buildings.
No,
Can I
you're
say
not.
something, Mr. Palacio?
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, I think if we select individually, it's like something suspicious, not viewed as, hey, the project manager is supposed to, what we hired him is to take charge and report to us. But when we go, let's break it down, 1, 2, and 3, and use all of them posts, what is it telling you? Something fishy to me, so I don't know. I just kind of disagree with you.
Well, my only question is it an uncommon practice? That's my only question. I'm not making assumptions about how sketchy.
No, I mean, there, it's not uncommon. Every project has, depending on the project itself, will lend itself to a more favorable process. The more complex the project, the more particular to assure that we are recommending or at least hiring those respective firms that can do those types of projects. But in regards to what is in your best interest is, I respect San Benito ISD for their effort of transparency. I do respect them for their effort to assure that they hire clear professionals. You can do it in any method, and not to leave any of them out. But to answer your question, you can use any of them at any point in time. It just depends on where your level of comfort will be. It's different for everybody. I might hold a position on a ranking that you might not see. You may see it different. It just depends. It's in the eye of the beholder. But yes, there are pros and cons to all of them. But again, we want to make sure that we work with whatever's chosen is we make it work.
Mr. Palacios.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. How are you doing this evening?
You're making me eat my words already.
No, ma'am.
So, give me some time,
No.
and I will come
Well,
around.
Well,
But
you know,
this was a real good presentation. I learned a lot, okay? But, it's getting there.
Well, and I encourage any board member, every board member, challenge us. That is what we're here for. We make sure that at the end of the day, that we account for 100% of everything, that we communicate with everyone. And I found, I was raised that every business is done right on the table. And so, full disclosure, I encourage any of the questions, and we like to be challenged. I'm prior military, so that's all I know how. So, but I appreciate words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Number 3, review and discuss the bids number BV-1218 SDPLP Salsa District Property at La Paloma.
What are we buying?
No, we're selling.
Oh, we're selling.
Yes, sir. Mr. Rosas, we went out for soliciting the sale of the district property, which is at La Paloma, and we received one bid. We did set a minimum bid, and the person that submitted Community Development Institute Head Start submitted a bid of $184,000. It is slightly higher than the appraised value that we had our own appraisal. So we would like to take it to the board to consider the sale of it.
Okay.
Do you all have any questions?
Questions? Agenda item?
Thank you, sir.
Number 4, review and discuss of the parking lot supplement parking areas.
We're bringing back something that the board wanted to do in the presentation of Dr. Carmen has said to do some renovations of complete the parking lot throughout the district. This is, the board wanted us to look at supplementing some additional parking spaces at the high school. We've uploaded, and Mr. Garcia is here to answer any questions. He submitted a proposal of A, B, and C.
Dr. Carmen, members of the board, good evening. You have before you an aerial view of the high school.
It's so neat.
You have 3 different choices here, scenarios of a parking area. It's A, B, and C. We'll discuss letter A. If you can focus on the bottom left, just above the A, that'd be the main entrance where the guard shack is. You would come in and follow the arrows. You would have about 83 parking places there. We would leave all the palm trees and the cable and all the posts along there. We wouldn't have nothing to do with them. This would be about 32 feet wide by about 800 feet long. The good thing about this letter A scenario is that they could come back around and go out the same way they came in. They could come out through Greyhound Lane. They could go behind the tennis courts or the gyms actually and go out on the other entrance, or they could go out through La Palma Boulevard if that area is open. So you got several ways to exit. The next scenario is letter B.
Mr. Garcia, I know we haven't bid this out, but I think you got prices. Would you include that when you talk about each A, B, and C, please?
Sure. A would probably come around $64,420 to do that parking lot. Letter B, the next page, you'll notice that all the palm trees are kept in place, and you'll have a parking place in between each palm tree, which only creates about 44 parking places. And this would be a lot of work to actually excavate each area, you know, to make like just each pad. So it would be pretty expensive, and I estimated about $33,000, and it'd only give us 44 parking areas. About 44. Half of basically what the other is gonna give. Letter C, on the other hand, it was the last one we have, is follow the entrance, would have to remove all the palm trees, the cable, and just have an entrance going in, and it would be about 20 feet deep, or going in, and you would have about the same amount of parking places, which would be about 83 parking places. And that cost to that would be about $38,094.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia, for putting it together. I think A,
I like letter A.
I think C, just with C, I'm anticipating safety because you have oncoming traffic. And
Right, they'd be
so-
coming in and they'd have to be backing up into the same street.
And same with B, but
Same.
A also falls in line. We would be contradictory if we cut all those palm trees, given what Sullivan just presented, so. So I think,
What would I do with them? That would be very costly to dig them all out. We were thinking, on the other hand, of chopping them all down, and we'd have to pay somebody to remove, we would do the work, but we'd have to haul them off to the trash.
Ni modo.
It's trash. We could try to sell them, man, sure.
I guess my question is, do we need all of them?
You want what?
Do we need all of them? Do we need all the palm trees there? I know
Do
it's kinda
we
costly.
need them?
I know it's kind of, they're beautiful, okay, when they're nice and trim.
Well, to some people's eyes, you know, to me, it's just maintenance. You know, Mr. Tumberland said when he planted all those palm trees, I never thought I'd.
where's Ms. Atkinson? Like-
Yeah, but that beautifies, is for beautification, I mean,
Yes, ma'am.
I like A.
8,
I like like A.
Agenda item?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
agenda item?
Yes.
Okay. Number 5, review and discuss intercount replacement, San Benito High School.
Thank you.
So just for clarification, are we looking at A, B, or C, or?
A.
A.
Mr. Corman? Intercom, number 5.
Right, so the intercom system at the high school, I believe is the original one, 40 years ago. When we did the renovation this summer, and I guess turned the power back on, we had some issues with that older system. I think most of them have been worked through. I think all the classrooms at least have the announcements in case there is an emergency, they would at least hear that. But it brought to the forefront the fact that we have a 40-year-old system, and if there's ever an emergency, we would like to have a reliable system. So we got this quote. It is through a co-op. This work can be completed over the summer months, so it would not impact our daily routine or running of that campus. And that cost would be $213,836.90.
Dr. Carmen, is this intercom, does it go all the way to the outside facilities that we have at the high school?
I'm going to ask, I think, Ms. Pena, but I believe it goes to every single,
Plus that,
The Go Center, the Migrant Go Center.
no, I'm talking about the sport complex. That's gonna be,
Current one doesn't, right?
next is,
it does.
Good evening. What was the question?
Will it go to the sports complex?
Yes. Wherever there's existing intercom now, it'll replace all of that.
okay. Agenda item?
Thank you, Ms. Pena.
Number
It also
6.
includes the Go Center. That was one of the areas that it didn't have any because it's a newly portable, but it will include that.
Okay. Number 6, review and discuss of LEDs proposals.
All right. What you have in front of you here are some options if we're to move forward with some LEDs within our buildings. The first one I included, in fact, the first 4 are attachments from E3. But the first one is the bid that you saw back in June.
It's coming up, it's just loading.
It was mostly a tube retrofit. It does include some new fixtures, but you have seen this 88-page document, I think, in full length 7 months ago. It was the cheapest option to do a retrofit instead of new fixtures. At the time, that was my recommendation, was to go forward with a retrofit for most of those existing lights. I think we'll recoup our money quicker, and we'll still see the same savings. But I did verify, and Mr. Savarino, by the way, is in the audience here and can answer any questions you might have on the E3 bids. And then Mr. Garcia is here on the Schneider bid if you have any questions. But that is the original bid from E3. They did verify that price is still available. The second attachment, there have been some discussion back in June on labor warranties, and E3 has added this onto that bid to add on a 10-year labor warranty for the 4-foot linear lamps, which is most of the lights, will be $5,000. The second one, which includes the parking lot lights and other exterior features, is already included. And then for the hard-to-reach fixtures, like within the gym, the high bays, that labor warranty for 10 years would be $15,000. So our maintenance personnel would not be vested at all as far as paying for any light, no more ballasts are gone, or the warranty for the first 10 years. The next bid, third attachment there, is what I had asked for just before Christmas break from E3, was to give us the bid on the 8 campuses they had been the lowest on the initial bid. And this is a new fixture bid. I just got an error. But this bid, if it opens,
It's downloading.
maybe it's too large. All right, Bill, I hope you brought a hard copy. 1 point, okay, 1.6, 1 point, Thank you.
607, 757. And
Can you come up to the mic just so we can?
I gotta log out and log back in. There it goes.
gotta have the glasses. For the 8 facilities, it was 1,607,757. That's the new fixture. And the 14 facilities, I'm sorry, yeah, the district-wide was 3,462,754.
And the E3 bid on the new fixtures, that was entire new fixtures. There was no lamp replacement on either of those bids. Is that
That's
is that
correct, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So new fixtures, we have the new bid from E3, whether we split campuses, we have that number, or if we go district-wide with E3, we have that number at 3.4 and change. Those are the E3 bids. Any questions for Mr. Savarino on the bids from E3?
I guess, because you were talking about 3 different PDF files, right? Does that mean that there's 3 different categories or 3 different implementation phases?
So what E3 has provided us was their original bid, the tube retrofit. That's the very
the
first
retrofit.
attachment when it opens correctly. The second one was the optional labor warranty that we could add on to that if we choose to go that route.
Okay,
The third PDF, which was their second bid, was what the board had asked for with new fixtures for 8 campuses. That's 1.6 million. And then the fourth attachment is actually their third bid. If they did all 18 campuses, their bid was 3.4
3.4 for all 3. Oh,
for all 18 of the buildings we're talking about.
okay.
Okay, and then the last attachment is the bid I've received from Schneider thus far. And Mr. Garcia is here if you have any questions on that. They provided a bid in the amount for all 18 campuses of just under $3,290,670. I have yet to receive the bid on the 10 buildings they initially were lowest on. And I'm still waiting for confirmation to see if the tube retrofit pricing from June is going to be the same, or if it may go up a little bit. It sounds like it may go up a little bit, but I don't have those hard numbers yet for the board to look at. I will point out, I tried to do my due diligence. This is not my area of expertise, but I tried to do my due diligence, so the board would, I think, be looking apples to apples. And I highlighted on here some tubes, starting with ATL4 code through DTL2E code. Those would be, and Mr. Garcia, you tell me if I misspeak here, those would be tube, not new fixture retrofits. Am I saying that correctly? The ballast would be gone, but they would be tubes, not new fixtures.
Thank you, Mr. Carmen. Members of the board. Yes, that is correct. I think just an easy way to figure it, we figured about 90% of the 18 campuses, 90% of your lights would be replacements with new fixtures, and then about 10% were going to be retrofit, is the number I thought Ryan shared with us this morning, Dr. Carmen. But so in other words, what we came up with was, like, for example, in closets or areas that didn't make sense to put a brand new fixture, an HVAC room that has a light fixture, we figured the best value was just to do a retrofit there. But in your main classrooms, hallways, areas that would be replacing the total fixture with a new panel.
And then those can lights toward the bottom, the second and third from the bottom, there are 2,328. It's like these lights right here, right? The can. And those would not be new fixtures either in this model. Those would be removal of the bulb, removal of the ballast, and then an LED plug-in.
Yes, it's a retrofit.
Okay.
So
if I'm counting fixtures, there were 3,221 in the first portion, 2,400 in the second portion, almost 5,700 that would not actually be new fixtures. It's closer to like 25%, I think.
Okay.
But
I'm just going by the discussion we had this morning with
Right.
the engineer, but.
right, and then I did the math after. So it's not quite an apples to apples comparison. that's what I have thus far to present to the board. And obviously, the two companies are here for any questions you have.
What does this mean? The school district will be responsible for procuring the fixtures and lamps from the dealer's electrical supply?
Sorry, thank you, ma'am. So in this bid from Schneider, in an effort to, I think, offer a little less cost to us, they are suggesting that we would go out and purchase from Dealers Electrical in Harlingen. And once those lights and lamps were delivered to the district, they would then take possession of them and be responsible for storing them. But there would be, the responsibility would be ours to purchase the lamps and lights separately from Dealers Electrical.
The advantage of that is we're not charging the district any overhead or profit on the materials. We're giving you the materials at what it would cost us. You'd be getting it direct from the supplier.
I was trying to point out the differences between the two bids to be as transparent as possible.
Well, I think it's just, well, yeah, Doc, it's not apples to apples, but, you know, I think we've been dealing with this project long enough. You know, we're not engineers. We're not gonna pretend to be, like I say. You know, a lot of this, you know, retrofit, not retrofit, so on and so forth, and all this electrical information, whether the savings, no savings, or so on and so forth. Basically, what you're doing here is basically you're giving the company, when you go with a certain company, you're giving them, you know, all the you're giving them all the rights or the key to pretty much say to drive the car. So, you know, my thought process here, you know, I know Dr. Carmen got pretty much beaten up over this a while back, you know, several people coming to him with several different, you know, situations. Dr. Carmen, you know, has said it over and over again, he's not an engineer. So, you know, I know we have a PM now, a project manager. You know, I think what we need to do is have a conversation with him, you know, as well as our legal and administration, and see what we can do and see what he thinks is the best fit for our district at this moment in time. You know, because we can sit here and talk about this all day long, whether putting a new bulb for fixtures and so on and so forth, and, you know, I guarantee you we're gonna have 1,000,001 questions again. You know, so, you know, for me right now, with the situation at hand, you know, I would, you know, if it's a decision to be made, then, so, you know, that would be my push, my recommendation.
My question is how, what's the urgency? A, I know that we started about a year ago, right, on this conversation.
More than a year.
Or more than that, right? And I guess, I mean, from my perspective, I don't think we have all the information at hand. I think what you just gave us, and then us having to go out and purchase the items, I mean, I don't think we have the manpower. Mr. Garcia, do we have the manpower to even go out and buy these light bulbs and then store them here locally, or how does that work, to even consider that?
We could probably store them at the old auditorium at the old BC. That place is big enough to store them all if we had.
Yeah, and we had that discussion this morning. Dr. Carmen actually asked that question. The order would probably be placed in a four-phased approach, so based on the schedule. So, and we're going to help facilitate that. It's just a matter of sending a PO and putting the order in, and then the materials delivered.
So there's two bids out there. 3.4 million, that's you all, and you all secure all the light bulbs and whatever's needed. And then there's the less than 3.4, but we secure the light bulbs. Is that gonna be an additional cost for us, or how does that?
Yes.
No, there's no additional cost. We're giving you our cost for the lights that we've reached out to vendors to get a cost. So we're passing that cost directly to you. We're not making any overhead profit on that. Your invoice will come directly from them. So there is no profit that we're gonna make on that. We're just gonna make it on the project management and the installation side.
Mr. Palacios, I'm sorry, sir, we're gonna use you now. Can we use you for this?
Mr. Torres,
Yes, but we need to change the agreement and add it under an additional service, so yes, that's your question.
no, he means like right now in current time. Can we technically ask Mr. Palacios about?
And I guess, what's your take on this, Mr. Palacios?
I'm very familiar with the process. I've been in the process of LEDs. We've done facility assessments before. We've done it for the county. We've done it for school districts. We've done it for cities. We've worked alongside with Snyder. We've worked alongside with some of the different vendors that you're looking at. I think the most important thing is let's find a ground zero, make sure we can compare apples to apples. I think that we could provide that service in hopes to work alongside with who you decide to supply it, install it. It's a really, if you look at just history, there has been issues in respective districts, lawsuits and all, just because there's a lack of clarity when they get into an LED retrofit, changing out your traditional lighting systems for savings on the M&O side, an expectation set and the lack of meeting certain expectations. Our job is to make sure that we can get in anything, whether it's lighting or anything. Earlier, we were having discussions regarding some curb appeal and changing buildings and things like that. We're here to assist in any way possible with anything that the board believes that there'll be some value in looking at, just to assure that at the end of the day that we protect your best interest. We're here for that. We're very familiar with it, and if the board sees fit, we'd be glad to work alongside with whoever you'd like to work with and make sure that whatever is done is in your best interest. Yes.
Just for clarification, on some of the proposals, whenever you asked the question on, you were comparing our 3.4 number, that was, we basically had two proposals that were that we're comparing. One was full retrofit of the new fixtures, or not retrofit, new fixtures throughout. That was our $3.4 million number, that we take full responsibility from ordering the equipment, total turnkey, and so forth. The 2.2 was a retrofit of every fixture, including all new lenses. That's the project that we've implemented over 120 of those projects through the state of Texas, just with school districts alone. We've had great success here in the Valley. So I just want to make sure whenever you're comparing, when Dr. Carmen had mentioned that we're doing some tube retrofits and some fixtures, ours is either all tubes at 2.2 or all new fixtures at the 3.4. But we take full responsibility from ordering the equipment, deliver the equipment. It's our baby if we miss it. If there's anything that goes wrong, it's us. We're the one responsible for it. So we've never been involved in a lawsuit in our existence. So just wanted to share that.
So I got a question for you real quick, Mr. Reno. As far as timeline is concerned, I know there's been some issues raised recently around the valley with timelines with the LED. It's taken us a long time to get to this point, and the last thing we would want to do is, go a certain route, and then all of a sudden now there's timeline issues. So how can you promise us that we won't have, let's say we go with you or whatever, how can you promise, or do you guys have something set in stone that you guys have a certain timeline and you guys are going to absorb the, the hit if it does?
Yes, sir. So we, as a company, we usually retrofit about 150 fixtures a day on the tubular and 100 new fixtures a day if you went that route. So we're looking at about an 8.5 month construction period from start to finish once we get our material. I ask you to, to please ask around. We can sit here as a sales rep and tell you what you want to hear, but we have references throughout the valley, throughout the state of Texas. We've met all of our timelines. So all I can tell you is that we've estimated 8.5 months from start to finish every fixture in the district as part of our project.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, can I add something to the board? When we started, there were about 5-6 companies, okay? Fortunately, we got 2 companies here. We also mentioned that we wanted to use 3 companies because it was a lot. Now, we got 2 companies that their proposals is great, but coming back and forth, it bothers us, and I'm pretty sure it bothers them as a businessman. So I personally, I propose get the best of both of them. There's 18.99, and that's it. They're going to come different because one building has 20 lights and the other one has 30 lights. I can see that, okay? But we did propose three companies when we began. And I don't want to come back with this. And I like the fact that the project manager is going to see, hey, he can see both of them, okay?
Gentlemen, can that be done? I'm just asking a question. Can that be done between both companies to have a 50-50% and Mr. Palacios oversee the distribution of campuses?
We work for the district, so whatever it is you.
Well, I think first of all, this is the whole point of the conversation here. You see the frustration already, okay? So the thing is, my personal opinion is when you go back to the drawing board, make sure we have all our facts straight, okay? We have a PM that we can utilize, okay? We're not engineers here, we're not any of that stuff. The last thing we need is to go to the same situation we did with the 3 schools or 2 schools we did when we first came on the board, okay? There was a lot of issues there. That's the reason why they're not here, okay? So in my opinion, if we're gonna do this thing, let's do it right. Just be transparent about it, and we bring the best company to the forefront, and whoever wins the bid gets it, okay? Or if the PM thinks both of them can do it, then so be it. But right now, it's once again, it's this whole situation again where we're having to make decisions on the fly right now, and we don't have all the information right now. So if it was up to me, it's very clear cut who we're gonna go with because they have the bids in hand. There's a company that doesn't even have, the full bid right now. So once again, you wanna, per se, give it to both of them, but one of them's it doesn't even have all the facts yet.
Well, the
that's
thing is, like you said, it's your opinion, but as a board, there was spread out 3 companies as a board. Not one opinion, one person, it was board up as 3. Now we're down from 5 to 2, and I think it's appropriate at this point to have the 2 companies managed under the project manager. So, take a vote.
So now it's up to Dr. Carmen. What do you feel, Doctor? You feel comfortable with the numbers? I mean,
So what I think I'm hearing, obviously, I'm not hearing anything consistently. One is, you don't need LED, no. Do we absolutely need LEDs? No. We'll still have school tomorrow, whether we have fluorescent lights, whether we have incandescent lights, whether we have LEDs. No, yes, we'll still have school. The attraction to the LEDs, of course, are the savings. So of course, I come back to the numbers. I'd be happy to make sure we have complete bids, apples to apples, and if it involves one company or the other, or a split, like I proposed all the way back in June, then I'm happy to bring whatever we think is best to the board. I would certainly appreciate the expertise of Mr. Palacios and his team as we sort through these. Because like on these codes for the lights, I didn't know until I realized what the T meant too. I didn't know that initially. Somebody had to tell me that. Whereas an engineer on Mr. Palacios' team will recognize that right away and be able to differentiate if there are differences on the bid. So I'm happy to pull this off. No board action yet. Evaluate the complete bids when I get the other 2 pieces of information from Schneider with Mr. Palacios and his team. We amend the agreement so that he has access to that project as well. And then with his guidance and knowledge in construction, we'll come back to the board with a recommendation. Like I said, whether it's A, B, or a split deal. Is that a fair approach to take at this point?
That's fine with me.
My question is, it was proposed 3 companies, regardless. It was proposed 3 companies. It was not this discussion to change it. It was not posted there to change from 3 to 1. The thing was 3 companies, and now we got 2 companies. Hey, split it, get the best price for us, and that's what I'm looking at. I mean, as far as apples to apples, I'm pretty sure both of them can work different, but the best for the school district. So that's my proposal.
I think I would follow the lead on administration and trust Dr. Carmen on what he believes, because at the end of the day, it's him and his administrators who are going to be leading this project. So I will defer to Dr. Carmen.
Any questions? Yeah.
The bid that we didn't turn in, and I think you mentioned it, but it might have been missed. Our original bid for the tubes to do the retrofit was like 2.3, which is higher than their bid right now. The numbers that we're finding out right now is that the price is going to be higher than what the original bid is. So that number, I can tell you now, is not going to be the 2.3. It's probably maybe 2.4 or 2.5, whatever it comes out at, but they're already at 2.2. So I think the question y'all have to consider is, do you want to do a retrofit, or do you want to do a full replacement, or a replacement with some of the closets and rooms that really don't need a brand-new total fixture replaced as well? So, but I mean, we'd be happy to turn in that bid, but does that clarify that part on the, because we didn't turn in the quote for the,
Right, right, I understand, and I didn't ask for it until, I think, last Wednesday, but at this point, I think our direction is going to be to wait on that bid, and then on your bid for the 10 buildings, because what I did initially with the retrofit bid is I split out the buildings based on low bidder per building, and that was my proposal. And it wasn't 9.9, it was 10.8, but it was still very close dollar-wise, I think, between the two companies. Should that be the breakout this time, and Mr. Palacios and his team look through it with me and advises that's the best route to go, I'm fine going lowest bidder for the same material, the same work, the same, I'm great with that.
okay. I mean, we're happy to present anything you'd like.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Let's set a timeline to get this over and done with. I know it's gonna be too short for this board meeting, but can we get this done and closed for our February board meeting? So if y'all can work closely on that and get that out of the way, that way we know we won't mess with it anymore.
I will bring a recommendation to the February meeting, yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Number 7, committee concerns. Meeting adjourned at 9:45.